Next up, we do have a doozy of a game. France versus New Zealand. One of the great historic matchups, one of the great rivalries in sport. Cross hemispheres, they both have the utmost respect for one another, and it's going to be going down again at the Stade de France in Paris. Kick-off 8 o'clock in the evening, 9 p.m. local time. It's Saturday again, 20th of November. It's the tail end, the pinnacle of Super Saturday, although maybe England Springboks might outmatch it. It remains to be seen, but it is a great box office game to have of a Saturday night
show all the same.
100%. Wayne Barnes getting the whistle for this one. He's going to be the man in the middle. Very good ref. Good to see him get
well, hopefully this will pass that event. Wayne Barnes and this fixture in the 2007 quarter-final.
That's true, yeah.
And the forward pass, it was flat, lads. Get over it. It was flat. Flat ball for Michalak. Yeah, it was good pass and a good try.
Flat out of the hands.
Yeah.
Flat out of the World Cup.
Maybe forward with momentum.
Yeah.
But, listen, why
would you bring that up? I think people will
Wayne
bring
Barnes is in charge of this game.
I know. Luke Pearce and Carl Dixon on the touchline with Stuart Terhige even in the TMO, an all English refereeing team for this one.
In all seriousness, that's as good a refereeing team as you can have.
Yeah. I think it should be no issue there. It's a great storied history that these two have. They've been playing each other for over a century, and as of 2015, they'd played 56 times. They played a couple more since then. First encounter was during the 1905-06 All Blacks tour of Europe and North America. New Zealand won that one 38-8 in their first meeting, and it was not until their third meeting in 1954 that France got their first win. France first toured New Zealand then in 1961, which is a while ago now as well, and before any of the home nations, though. They were the first to go down that far. The All Blacks won all 3 tests, which is kind of not that uncommon. France first defeated the All Blacks in New Zealand on Bastille Day in 1979. They first achieved a series win in New Zealand in 1994 when they won both tests, and since 2000 they both have contested the Dave Gallagher trophy, which is another one of those of perpetual trophies in motion.
Yeah, indeed. And I think it was the 94 series when it really came to life, because that's one of the records they still hold now. It's one of the France have this aura in New Zealand rugby, and they'll always respect them, and it's because of what happened first and foremost in the World Cups, but also that 1994 last team to win at Eden Park. Nobody's won there since 1994, nearly 30 years now. But France are the last team to do it. That's always in the background. It's always a stat that pops up. 2 World Cup finals they met in, and then more importantly, that trifecta of games, I would say, 1999 dumping them out of the tournament, 2007 dumping them out of the tournament, and 2011 all but beating them in the final of the World Cup, when they absolutely terrified them, scared the life out of them in that final, and played all the rugby.
Probably deserved to win. It was a bit of Scooby-Dooby stuff going on. More man of the whistle with the whistle stuff in that one. But storied history. Obviously, as you were saying, they've met a few times and taken each other's scalp in the World Cup. The largest winning margin between them in a test was a 61-10 victory by the All Blacks in 2007. The overall record, I think New Zealand do hold the edge, but overall they've 48 tests. Is what New Zealand have won to France's 12, with 1 match drawn. But 12 wins is by far the best record of any Northern Hemisphere team against New Zealand as well. They hold the best one for that, and for that they do have the respect of them.
Although, and I think it's important to note that this is a rivalry which has been living off its reputation for the last decade plus.
True enough.
I mean, truly, the All Blacks put to bed this rivalry in 2015 when that great team put 60 on them, and could have they just absolutely from minute one annihilated them. And that was the French at their lowest ebb.
There's also been a 3-match series that they lost in sweeping fashion as well subsequent to that. France have been a bit nowhere in the mid-aughts and stuff, and it's only now with this young France team that there's a bit more buzz and a bit more excitement.
June 2009 was the last time that France won, and I would say that broadly speaking about this French team, they have a lot of hype around them. They have yet to prove that they can lace the shoes of the team from that era. The team from 06 and 07 that won Six Nations, that made that World Cup final in 2011 despite having no coach. But your Josians, your Rougeries, your Vincent Clercs, like that was Dusautoir, obviously. Yeah. That was a special French team, and as special as some of these players have been, they haven't been a patch on that team yet.
Nordicky and all of those great players. Yashvili. Like Dupont's great. Yashvili was great too.
This French team have been a brilliant in moments, but rarely, if ever, have they put together a complete performance.
Yeah.
We were talking before the show, like what was their best performance in this Galtier kind of era? And it was probably the one against Ireland in Paris in lockdown last year, towards the tail end of that 2026 Nations when they opened us up. And they were good that day. Ireland kind of played into their hands. But to me, that tells me that if they want to win this game, they're going to have to play their best performance. This has to be better than anything we've seen from them so far.
Yeah, they have yet to put in an 80-minute show, really. For their fans, really, they've been kind of beautiful and irresistible at times, but also infuriating at other times, and it's tough to know which France you're going to get. But the jury's still out on them. And the only as far as this matchup, then we will look at both sides and how they're looking to establish their winning conditions for it. France do have the home advantage, as you were saying. You'll have a boisterous crowd. The only real recipes we've seen in terms of how to beat this All Black side in terms of this year, we've seen the Box do it, we've seen Ireland do it. And both times it was by dominating possession, dominating territory, having most of the ball and just denying them opportunities to play. And generally this French team has been abysmal in the territory department and the possession retention department, and would tend to kind of grab tries themselves with 30 or 40% possession and look good in moments, but soak a lot of pressure to do so. And Sean Edwards' defence has been good at doing that, but like if they tee up a shootout in Paris here, can they really hope to win against this All Black side?
It's a curious question. I mean, Galtier did say after the Ireland game that they're going to try and beat the All Blacks their way, and that's always been what the French have been about. They're not going to replicate an Ireland performance or a Springbok performance against the All Blacks. They're not going to get that much advantage up front, and they back themselves as being perhaps the only team in the world that maybe could win a shootout. You know, if you marry the Edwards defence with the somewhat issues that the All Blacks have been having on multi-phase this year, you can shut down at least enough of their plays and limit their options, and then strike with your own offensive elegance that you can bring sometimes. Then maybe that's their own special recipe. They have picked their team. They have charged 15 and 23 men with getting it done. Cyril Bai, Pietro Movaca and Winnie Antonio is a very good scrummaging unit. Lovely to see Antonio having, like, Mohamed Ouas was like decent but constant cards. Antonio for me, brilliant. Much better guy to have in there from the start. And Cyril Bai last week, destructive at the scrum.
True.
They've gone with Woki, interestingly, huge vote of confidence in him in the second row with Willemse, and then they've got Francois Croce, Anthony Gélange and Greg Aldred, who needs a big game from number 8. And in the back line they have abandoned the Ntamack-Jalibert axis. They've given Ntamack the nod at 10 with Dupont, the Toulouse combo, brought in Dante into the midfield with Gaël Ficou, who's shifted still out there in the 13 jersey, and they've got Villiers back in there with Penaud and Jaminet keeping that 15 jersey as well.
I think it might be their best blend. Like, obviously we were saying, like, they took a almost completely different side down to Australia and had some good success down there, and found certainly in Jaminet they found a great asset that's going to be serving them very well as far as exiting and just their kicking game. But they were coupling those findings by trying out something new in that 10-12 axis that didn't work and didn't offer them anything, whereas what they were doing very well in the Six Nations and in the years prior was being dynamic in the centres. Like, obviously they're missing Vakatawa and that is a big hole in them, but Ficou's been brilliant, and he was kind of frozen out with those 2 10s operating, and there was no real gain line. In Dante you have a bit more of a traditional hard man running that line, trying to sit down those well, he's opposite Quint Paya in this instance, but like there's a bit more balance to this back line already on paper than even the ones that they were rocking up to the Six Nations with, because they couldn't exit in the Six Nations.
No question. And it was funny that off for the Penaud try against the Georgians off the scrum, there were 2 10s on the pitch. It was Ficou who was the link man who picks the inside ball. He was the guy who was playing distributor. And it's definitely interesting to see him operate from the 13 jersey. It kind of changes the offense a little bit. Like, you could have gone Dante on the outside and Fiku on the inside and kept it going that way.
You don't want, like, Dante is big and physical, but he's opposite Rico. Like, the speed is what
they want to go. They want to get to the edge. I think it's an offensive decision as much as a defensive
but I think
one.
it is as much because their best defenders, Fiku, by far, in the open space, and their best reader, and the 13 channel against the All Blacks is where you want to have your guy who shuts them down. And he will have a job to do that. He'll have Dante inside him, so he can kind of try and Lethania on that and try and force any traffic back into Dante, and Dante will smash and he'll get a turnover steal as well if it's going. But yeah, the read is definitely Fiku, and they're right to give him that job because he's the best at it. He's a really good rugby player.
No question. And the other thing that's interesting about this French team is that they do have a 6-2 split with some explosive forwards on the bench. They've got the underrated barrel-chested Barlow covering hooker.
He's awesome.
They don't have Marchand, but this guy is an absolute unit.
He is a tour de force when he comes in, when you've seen him,
and this is against an All Black team that will be playing, the last 20-30 minutes of their season. So there are definitely some big boys to be bringing on. Jean-Baptiste Gros, we know how good he can be at the scrum. Demba Bamba, both of those guys will be looking to rebound from a bad shift off the bench last week. But Roman Taufi Fanua, Thibaut Flamand, who was great last week, and Dylan Cretin, it's a lot of heft to bring on.
It is. The dubious question is why start Wokey when you have Taufi Fanua and Flamand on the bench? Like, I would think Wokey off the bench makes a bit more sense, and like certainly
attack the All Black line. That must be your answer.
I guess, but what about the scrum? Like you have
but I mean, the way Ireland took some of those lineouts off New Zealand, it definitely unnerves them. They were the only teams to take the lineout off them were Ireland and South Africa.
That's true, and that is a good in, and Wokey is good at that skill, but like, surely the scrum is a better in for them, just based on Cyril Bai's form and like just what they did to Georgia, who are a more scrum oriented team than the All Blacks. Like, it feels like they could come up a little bit light, but it is
still
good
got
to have
Vince
that
in there, and
that's true.
It's not
definitely
totally
it's close to their most balanced team that I think they've named in the Galthier era. But I still kind of think with that lock thing, it's a little bit like, I think there's still jigging around that needs to happen before ultimately they're going to try and make a run for their home World Cup, which is where both of these sides are eyeballing. Ultimately, it is the tail end of a long year. That is the middle year in the gap, in terms of the gap of the World Cup. So it's very much developing offenses and defenses and just two developing sides. But it is also just a class matchup, and I think the French should be the ones motivated to try and make a game of it. They should be encouraged by what Ireland did last week. And I'd love to see them take them on up front and get some inroads. Yeah,
they might think if their pack steps up to the challenge and doesn't get blown away by a hurt All Black team who like to go back to that physicality after a loss, usually speaking, and they still have Retallick and Sam Whitelock licking their wounds coming out along with some other fresh guys as well. Like, if they don't get blown away in that contact area on the inside, they will think that their offense matches up decently, perhaps a little better than what Wales were doing against the All Blacks. And even like Ireland's was very, Ireland's is a lot more regimented, and it's very much, there's pods, there's lots of pod work, lots of interplay, lots of Sexton calling plays. France is a little more jouet, but what it does have is the offensive chops and speed and ability of Antoine Dupont, who's got that X factor in an area where the All Blacks do struggle around that ruck.
Around the ruck.
It's
got to start off him off 9. Just bring those big runners. Bring Wokey around the corner. Bring these guys around the corner. Go yourself if it's there, Dupont, because like that is a gap that's there. Resourcing just the edge of the ruck. That should be where they're looking. If they're naive, they go wide too soon. But forcing them back on the inside, back on their heels, force them to make tackles. It's a good recipe, and then
get some offloads going, and then they do have to mind the pill. It's a huge depriving the All Blacks of their precious turnover ball is always a factor if you're going to be playing rugby against them. Ireland did a great job of it last week. Huge job for the Tide 5 to replicate that, but they should be bullish about taking them on. Their game is offense. Their game is speed. Their game is catching the All Blacks. And listen, they are as good a side as any in the world at turning line breaks into tries. They run great tracking runs. They rarely screw up their passes. They've had some fabulous tries this year, and they'll be looking to add to that. They
have guys like Noah in great form, Villiers in great form. They will take a try if it's there all day long, as much as the guys in Black will as well. Like, it's two really good offensively instinctive teams, and France are that as well. But with the Sean Edwards D is a massive challenge for them as well. It hasn't been as stellar as it had been in the previous couple of years. It will need to be here. They will need to, obviously limiting the amount of ball they have is first protocol, limiting the territory. But you will have to defend from time to time. And the All Blacks multi-phase isn't all that. If they can be cohesive with this new Dante and Fiku combination and shut up and shut out the outside, And yeah, maybe you can force the All Blacks into a stuttering, arrhythmic game where the breaking ball lands in Pinot's hands, and that can be the difference.
Yeah.
That's what France will be trying to orchestrate, is a bit of a scrap that ends up with a loose ball landing their way. Getting a nice Parisian bounce in the tail end of the game would see them home. I think, regardless of it, if they need to play bloody brilliantly, their pack need to step up and be brilliant. All of those 6-2 split needs to work, and it needs to kind of pay dividends in the second half.
And they need to make plays.
It's tight. Yeah,
they need to make plays. You need to see like a long. I remember the Boutier against England.
Yeah,
Boutier's gone now, but maybe Jaminet can find a little bit of that. The long arching kick deep that bounces into touch and gets the crowd involved, forcing the All Blacks back, playing with that sort of almost undefinable energy that they bring to their best performances, where the teams are rattled or on their heels, and discouraging the All Blacks, because the All Black confidence, while supreme at times, can be brittle, and if things go against them, if the French are dominating the ball, if their defence isn't able to get things off, and if they're winning contacts, but also just getting offloads, keeping the speed up, not allowing the All Blacks to get settled, and then putting the ball in behind them and forcing them to exit constantly, as they were in Dublin, not able to attack, which is all they really want to do, just limited in terms of the opportunities they have to attack the game. That would be massive. And then conversely, if you play them in, if you drop balls in the midfield, if you kick loosely to them, if you
kick at 22 and just get charged down and hand 7 points to them,
then you'll play them in. Then they'll be confident. Then they can run up a score, and that's always going to be the danger. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge for Dupont, who's the general, absolutely, of that team, but also Ntamak, who's been given the go at 10, and Jaminet, who's a huge boot, to try and control the game and strike with the boot when they need to.
Guys like Aldrit, who have been captain before, need to just keep dialed in, because you switch off for a moment against New Zealand, they punish you, and France just have a terrible habit of switching off for moments in games, and they do, and they will be punished here. They did it. They coughed up what could have been a famous series win in a similarly crazy, buffoonish moment at the tail end of Test 1 in Australia. They need to be sharp and be physical throughout, and committed to doing an 80-minute showing. Committing, not only is their fitness has improved. It used to be a thing that you could kind of make France kind of get tired, and you still somewhat can, but they have improved in that area. The standard of the top couture has gone up. The ball in play time is higher. All of these guys generally fitter. Guys like Flamand coming in from the Toulouse pack, brilliant player. And he's adding a lot in that. And it's, as you say, tail end, very long season for the All Blacks. Try and make that count. If you can try and exert some pressure and be in the game or edge a lead with some scoreboard pressure, freeze them out, get the crowd involved, get raucous, you might be able to just use some of that juju that they definitely have. They respect you regardless of what this young generation has had to show for it, but they respect the badge of France, and you can try and make that to their detriment if you can play a smart game and a consistent game for 80, which remains to be seen. The jury's out whether they can do it or not. I think they're close to their right team. I think in the Six Nations they were wrong in some areas, they couldn't exit and stuff, and they found a few good things in Australia, although they did leave a lot of their main charges at home. They were wrong to be experimenting with the dual playmaking thing. It made no sense. They have 2 decent 10s. They can rotate them on and off the bench.
Yeah, and also your 9 is your playmaker anyway, so what are you doing?
Yeah, all of that. And Fiku's out there, who's effectively a better playmaker than any of your guys. It just was imbalanced, whereas this is closer to balanced. I'm suspicious about the Woki decision, but I think you can correct it with Taufi Fanua. If it's not going well, you can obviously change it. I want to see a close to an 80-minute show from this French team.
And just the defensive the Edwards defence massive, but also Jaminet in the Hugo Keenan role, as it were, because the All Blacks
mopping up
the All Blacks were kicking a lot last week, and they might go back to it if they're not winning contacts or not finding edges on the multi-phase. And then all of a sudden, if you can force them to do that, and Jaminet can deal with it, you'll leave them in a place where only your own buffoonery could play them back in. And while that does happen, you'll hope that it doesn't. You don't want to kick yourself to a good 15-10 lead with 30 minutes to go and then drop the restart and give up a scrum or charge down an exit kick or one of those French things that they sometimes are want to do. They're going to have to play a sharper game.
Will Jordan for no good reason at all.
or kick it to him. The same no
difference. No tip on past. Well, Jordan, what are you doing?
And listen, from the All Black point of view, to look at the other side of the coin, it feels like a big game.
It is, yeah. It's not quite do or die. They are very quick to pull the doom and gloom thing, and
they have a high bar for success.
They do have a high bar for success, and they've lost 2 games this year, which is probably limboing under that high bar for success already. But the thing is, they have played All Black All Black rugby this year.
Yeah.
They've got back to it, and yes, there are some shortcomings. There's some imbalances in their team in terms of their multi-phase, in terms of their capacity to generate turnovers. I don't think the back rows worked. It's good to see Sam Cane back in, because obviously he was named captain. He is a bit of a ferret in terms of going into that breakdown and trying to hustle for it. That is more his MO as a game. And they probably need more of that. They need to kind of replicate what McCaw and guys like Kino were bringing to that back row in that great team of 2015 to get the balance a bit more right. But generally they should, back-to-back losses are something they don't tolerate. But to be fair, they don't tend to do them very often, if at all.
No.
I can't remember the last time they did back-to-back L's, to be honest. This All Black team, I don't even know.
I couldn't
you'd have
tell
to go
you,
a ways back to find one. And to be fair, they were humbled last week in Dublin, and they were humble in response to it. They were no excuses. They were saying they were outplayed, and they were accurate in their assessment of it. But very often when they dust themselves down, they lost to the Springboks, and then poor USA had to deal with their wrath in the next game, and France, they will be looking to exert their superiority.
Yeah, they'll be looking at a French team
going they're kind of nice. They play a little bit like us, but we're better.
Yeah, and they're vulnerable, and they can be got at.
Yeah,
and that's definitely what they'll be thinking. They'll also fancy dialing in the physicality, as they always do the week after a loss.
True.
But more to the point, a successful season under Foster when they started the season, they have got back to playing All Black rugby, but the benchmark is very much win Bledisloe, win the rugby championship, and then that's priority 1, priority 2.
Yeah.
Then go unbeaten in November, and then take the 1 spot back off the box. Those were the challenges. And last week's loss has coughed up the 1 spot back to the box. It's also chalked off any unbeaten November notions. And a win this week, it's conceivable if England can turn over the box that they could get their number 1 spot back.
Yes.
But as you say, the 2 defeats in November, 3 on the season, and all of a sudden, despite winning every trophy they were playing for,
and they are 2 tries away from their 100 tries in a season, which they will likely get in this game. France.
I would think so. It won't go down as a success, but it's not. It's important to note that it might not be total success, but it's also not failure. Foster's job isn't under pressure. They're not a side going nowhere necessarily, as much as some Kiwi pundits will grumble after a loss.
Yeah.
They still have plenty of nuggets of positivity.
Or the guys who keep commenting Scott Robinson in every Kiwi
Scott video. Robinson.
Razor, get him in now. Get him in yesterday. Fozzie's already discovered or rediscovered what they are meant to be about, but it is about tidying up in terms of over the next couple of years. They will play this game, and then they will have to reassess, and they will go away, and they have a big series now that is all the bigger courtesy of last week's result with Ireland when they resume their play next year. So it's a building process for them, but it's still been very positive. And for this week then, they're going to try and no need for motivation. When they're stung, they tend to come out firing to the pitch of the battle, and they've named a very good side as well, different side.
Aaron Smith is back.
That's good to see. He saw a few clips of him training. His passing still looking so sharp, because he is the best in the world. And yet they're this is it. Northern Hemisphere commentators will be saying Antoine Dupont, best 9 in the world. Very often it's been Aaron Smith, to be honest, and I think he is the one who is more proven. Dupont is great, and is to be fair, he was very impressive in the Argentina game, because he was dealing with messy ball, and he was getting it out of there quick by being tough, and he's good at that. He's got good clutch, good heart, good running game. He's all skills. He is one of the top scrum halves in the world, but the tippity top is Aaron Smith, because what is the main job of a scrum half is just clearing those rucks and setting that tempo, and the All Blacks inexplicably just aren't quite as sharp when he's not there, but when he's there, it's the service is flawless. It's you don't notice
it's that extra second.
Flawless.
It's that extra second, and it's that extra step on your on your run. Even just a forward hit up becomes so much more dangerous, because he's putting out a flat, quick pass. He doesn't need to take a step before he does it. To be fair, TJ, as good as he is, sometimes takes a step before passing it. His passes just take that extra second to get there as well. Whereas Smith fires these bullets out in front of you on the money, just inviting you onto the line a little quicker, gives the defence no time to set, and then just ends up generating a real dangerous tempo for a defence to try and cope with.
Indeed.
You definitely want that to be part of the template, but you also want to see some of these guys step up.
Akira Ioane getting a shout in the 6 jersey. He needs to be big and physical in there. He has been good off the bench, but he definitely needs to show up here. That he's got to start. Same with Sam Cane.
Some guys who had tough days were moved out of this team. Ethan Blackadder had a tough day. gone. Sever Reece had a really poor game last week, gone. And they do like to drop the hammer down on guys who don't meet the standard sometimes.
However, Dalton Papali'i feels more like a rest because he was, to my mind, their best performer last week, and he's also gone.
28 tackles.
28 tackles against a bullish, rampaging Ireland in Dublin. Maybe that's why you get the rest in. Plus, Sam Cane back in is something they probably wanted to do.
Add some balance.
Yeah, it looks a more balanced back row on paper, courtesy of Sam Cane being there. It's like someone to go and foraging. Like they don't necessarily want to commit to just tackling indefinitely and hoping for a mistake, although it could work against France. It's more likely to work against France than it was against Ireland last week in the mood that they were in. But in general, going forward, they will need guys who are more willing to go into the fire and get that ball, because they were sniffing around breakdowns last week but not really wholeheartedly, and they weren't able to get anything off.
And I do want to see the return of that violent blitz as well, that defensive blitz. I want to see them specifically pressure Ntamack, because to be honest with you, Ntamack is the kind of guy who is going to kick a terrible little dinky little thing in behind sooner than he'll take a mean contact from someone shooting on him.
Probably true.
He's the kind of guy who might just panic and dink it to nowhere, and Aaron Smith's covering, and that's the turnover ball you so desperately want.
Yes.
They really need to bring that outside to win blitz, but in particular blitz Ntamack.
Yeah, I would agree.
France are going to be looking to give Ntamack like an easy ride, like we're winning on the inside, Dupont's the threat, then when we're going to the outside, Ntamack gets it and he's got space and you're flat-footed, and then he can pick his passes and do his thing. But the All Blacks want to be proactive, and every time they see the ball going out to him, they want to be in his face, shutting down the outside.
Or whomever, probably Sam Cane as well, getting his face. But Tupaia is a good one. He's physical as well.
Rico getting up in that passing lane and being like, "I dare you, Roman. Do you think you're Finn Russell?" And probably he doesn't. And then all of a sudden, what's he do? That's the kind of thing that they like. Just painting those terrible pictures can be enough to get a French team to do something very silly.
It's true.
Just flying up and shutting down
what they
the
will
outside.
be encouraged with is their defence was mighty last week against
has been mighty all
their
year.
sternest test, though, as they were admitted, because the box beat them in a different fashion. But in terms of the offensive acumen of Ireland last week, that was the toughest test that this defence faced all year, and it came up really, really well. Like conceding 29 points, considering the possession stats, the territory stats, the contact collision zone stats in general.
The defense didn't concede 29 either. Some of those were jackal penalties towards the tail end of the game. The defense conceded 3 tries, 2 in quick succession, and 1 at the start of the game, and that was for giving like a million entrances.
Yes, indeed. So like against this French team, which are admittedly an attacking threat, but with their speed advantage in terms of Rico, out of 13, like it just feels like they should have it in them to bottle up this French side and then capitalise on the inevitable forced mistakes.
Force them to kick.
France aren't going to be patient enough to go through the 20 phases or so that it'll take to kind of wear them down and get an inroad. They will likely drop it on the toe after 3 or 4 that go awry, and that's where you can pounce on turnover and stuff. If it's an open game at all, they'll fancy their chances of transitioning and punishing France, and then they're right to as well. Just I suppose running through the team, it's much the same team. In the tight 5 are the same, isn't it? Moody, Coles, Dane Coles comes in, gets the start, and actually Taukeaho as well is in there as well. Cody Taylor out. As well, and then the back line, as we were alluding to, Quinn Tupaia and Rico Ioane in the midfield. George Bridge gets a run out on the one wing with Will Jordan on the other, and Geordie Barrett retains his jersey at full back. But crucially, I think they've improved their bench. In terms of the back line, they have Brad Weber, Damien McKenzie and David Havili. Damien McKenzie was someone they could have desperately used last week, and he's a good eye to introduce in the second half against a French team that could be very open at that stage.
He wins one-on-one battles all the time. He's got electric footwork and a really good passing game and can just make things happen.
It's true.
Love DMAC, definitely always should be involved for the All Blacks if they want to stay true to themselves and play their best game. And they've also got George Bauer back in on the bench with Ofatu and Afasi, which will definitely give them some heft to match the Springbok, or not the Springbok, the 6-2 split of the French.
Yes.
And Tubovai and Shannon Frizzell do need to be used this week.
Yes, indeed. And little Brad Weber, although I suppose I don't know if they'll want to take Aaron Smith off.
Depends how the game is going, of course, but they'll definitely fancy just winning it probably predominantly through the defensive game, forcing some mistakes, and then countering and winning the kicking duel through Geordie Barrett as well, and then countering off chaos ball.
Try and be the more disciplined, more calm team in the chaos, and that should edge.
And capitalise on the mistakes, and when the French are a little disjointed, they're probably off set piece and multi-phase. They'll be tough to break down. They are that Sean Edwards coach team, and the All Blacks will likely have to be a bit patient. They might have to kick the ball down deep, win some territory battles, trust that Jordy Barrett will edge them through the kicking game until the French dial out in a moment on a chaos ball, at which point you strike.
Yes, and it'd be nice to see the likes of Dane Coles getting himself out in the wide channels and doing some damage as well, and just getting that offense kind of purring a bit more. And I think it will already with the injection of Aaron Smith to help Mo'unga out, and it's a big game for Mo'unga to have it to try and dictate and control, because he was pretty poor off the bench in that Ireland showing as well, and he's obviously up against it because Bowden Barrett is the guy fighting him for the jersey, and it's like the best.
Yeah, and he's losing the battle again. Like the Mo'unga seasons are going on a terrible trajectory of like starting really, really high with the Crusaders, looking imperious, best 10 in the world behind that supreme pack.
Yeah,
brilliant. July series, excellent again, maintaining those levels. Bledisloe, he's kind of not quite as impactful somehow, but still very good and has some big plays, but he's going down a little bit. And then slowly as the season goes on, loses his jersey to Bowden Barrett, becomes less impactful as the Springboks come and match his pack, doesn't make the right reads in the game. Like, it's probably a harsh criticism of me. I still think he's a brilliant player.
True.
But just in terms of the level, the season tends to start here with the Crusaders and just go a little down when it comes to Richie Mo'unga. And I definitely think if he wants to take that 10 jersey,
he'll need to sign off the season with a nice stamp of
performance.
We'll beat France and do it in style and with aplomb in Paris. That is definitely the plan.
Size up Bentomac and step him.
Yeah.
That's always a way through. Mo'unga can beat guys one-on-one.
He can, he's got some great footwork. He's got a great little chip on him as well. Or you can, trust the back line, use that service from Smith to try and find Rico, to try and find Jordan. And,
if the French are in any way dialed out, and if they can overload Fiku or fool Fiku in some way and get to the edge,
just get Jordan the ball 1v1 with Pinot or whomever. I think I'd back him in that circumstance.
Well, Jordan is the hottest winger in town right now, so absolutely he's a man.
Although Pinot is down, I kind of give the edge to the person with the ball in that matchup.
Yeah,
like they're both good runners of the ball, but they can maybe let him go and defend. I think Jordan's probably the slightly superior defender, but in terms of how do you think it's going to go? I kind of think the All Blacks are going to win.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I don't have it in me to predict back-to-back L's for New Zealand. I just don't think there's wisdom in it. And to be honest, I've yet to be wrong in that in my predictions. Maybe one of these days I'll be wrong. One of these days they will lose 2 in a row. But I don't think it's this day.
And that third team is going to feel some heat.
I think the French will be victim to the backlash. And I think New Zealand are just a superior team to this France team. I'm excited by this young France side, but you were right to point out they still haven't reached that 09 and mid-aughts team, and not really even close.
They have to prove it. They have to prove it. It's been flashy. It's been too a little more flash than
style
substance.
Over substance. A little bit,
somewhat. Just
but I do think it'll be a pretty aesthetically pleasing game, just given the way both these sides play.
I hope it's not a blowout. I hope that France gets some stuff off, score some wonderful tries. That it's an absolute game. I fear it could be a one-sided game if the French don't rock up with everything they got.
Because the Kiwis just rock up and do a Kamate and put 60 on them.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't think they're putting 60 on them, but I think they should have too much. I think they'll
Kamate
rally.
Or Capo Opango.
I think Kamate.
This week Kamate.
Yeah,
I think it might be Capo Opango again. But
no, I think they'll go back to Kamate after last week's excursion into Capo Opango land.
Fair enough. Yeah. Who you got in this one? It is a great game as always. France v the All Blacks. Les Bleus versus the All Blacks is just
box office.
Yeah. It is one of the sexier fixtures in World Rugby, and we're just looking forward to it. Saturday night, going to be going down in Paris.
Absolutely. We're going to move on now. Thanks for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to like and subscribe. And hey, if you have an opinion of your own, if you disagree with what we're saying, leave a comment down below. We might just get back to you.